Finally, it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. I'm going to go over this 1963 Lincoln Continental Convertible here in just a moment. You see, at the time of this recording, about 2 days left, and it's at $22,500. I did want to just kind of lead in with a couple of quick updates. So the three Lincolns that I primarily focus on that have sold since my last video was the 69 Lincoln Continental Sedan, which sold for $73,500. Now, I've seen this car in person. I knew this individual. I know him. And I do believe the car had sold at auction and it ended up in Portland, Oregon. So that's where the location was at. It sold for $73,000. So pretty strong price, but there's a lot of work that went into that to kind of make that more of a custom Lincoln. Speaking of 68, 69, kind of the later year 60s, this 68 sedan sold for a very strong price, $45,000. And I didn't get a chance to do a review on it. You can check this one out on Bring a Trailer if you want to kind of dig a little bit deeper. But it kind of reinforces that these stock cars, the prices do continue to go up. And that's a good thing, I think, overall for the sellers. Obviously, for the buyers, you have to think about if you want to get in one of these cars, the prices do tend to increase for the nicer cars. And then finally, this was the 65. I had guesstimated about $7,000 to $12,000. It went a little bit higher than that, of course, which I think rightfully so. I think this car is definitely one that can, be brought back to its current beauty or its past beauty rather, or it could be easily resto modded if that's something you would like to do. So there's a couple of updates. I'll try to keep this high level. I know I love to go into details, but what we're looking at here, as I mentioned, a 63 Lincoln Continental Convertible. Now, if we look at Haggerty, I'm a customer of Haggerty, and you can see the prices range from anywhere from 25-ish thousand all the way up just north of 111,000. Now, what I'd like to do, I started to do this a moment ago. We can copy this VIN, and I'm over on the Lincoln registry, so you can kind of see what I do here. You basically paste it in, you hit search, and it's going to come back. This was entered on 11/7/2019, so just under 5 years ago, and then it was updated recently, probably because of this auction. Now, a few standout things with this car. Many people love the 63s. It's the last year before they went to the flat glass in 64. So a lot of folks talk about the elegance, that Elwood Ingle styling of the 61, the 2s, and the 3s. I'm a big fan of 63. I love the front grills on these cars, and they're just fantastic cars, from an appearance standpoint. Something to note, of course, it's a black Lincoln. That's what a lot of people want. It was not originally black, so we'll look at that and some of the Bring a Trailer data. Again, there are links in the description if you want to link directly over to this auction. We can see it does have the later year hubcaps, so 64, 65, kind of up, if you will, the 15-inch wheels. It does have an aftermarket radio, so that's something that I don't think is very unsightly because it's kind of era specific, so it doesn't really stand out too bad, but you could always, pick up a used radio if you wanted from someone like our friends at Lincoln Land. It does have the MEL 430 in it, which we'll take a look at. There are some photos underneath it, which I think are key. Obviously, I've talked about in the past, being able to see underneath these cars that are unibodies, and that's a key thing. We know that the paint code right here, the color X is burgundy frost paint. And we do see, of course, here 86 trim black leather. This would have been built on December 21st. And the key thing is it is a 5.2 for the ordering district or the DSO. So that is at Los Angeles, meaning that it came from a warmer climate area, which is key because, again, I know sometimes you might ask, well, what is the big deal on that? If the car had been like in a Rust Belt area and, it was driven in harsher conditions and things like that, it can sometimes lead to, more investigation underneath the car to go, wow, this thing is rusted out. So that's the key thing. There are a couple of videos, which I think, again, Bring a Trailer does a fantastic job with highlighting, or asking these owners, if you will, to at least supply a few videos because it does give some good context. There's some exterior 1, 2s, and 3s, a side view, a startup, an engine bay startup, top up, top down, power windows. Again, this is all super important, and this goes a long way in just going, wow, okay, this works or that works or whatnot. To save time, I'm not going to go through each of these videos, but if I was looking to buy this car and the power window video didn't mention the auto drops working, if they're operable or non-operable, I would suggest asking that question if someone hasn't already in the notes. A lot of times the auto drops may not work, and it's not the end of the world. If the windows work, you can still roll down the 2 rear windows a little bit and then close the door so that it seals. You close the door and then you roll the window up so it seals. So there is kind of a workaround, if you will, if those auto drops are not working. The key thing here that I'll reinforce is that when you look at this car, there are some minor imperfections. It's not perfect, and that's often how these cars are. If we look at some of the spacing here that I often talk about, these bigger cars also are so often referred to as land yachts. They're over the course of time, they may have gotten dented or dinged or things like that, and you'll see the spacing right here on this front bumper end for the driver's side. It looks a little bit tight here against some of this trim, but again, that's very, very minor in the grand scheme of things. Again, what stands out is it is black. It does have the little bit bigger wheel on it, so it has the 15. That makes it a little bit easier when you're kind of shopping for tires versus buying a 14. Of course, the number one thing is it is a convertible. It is currently located in Denver. And when I look at this car, like what I see is kind of like a true, for the most part, very original for many aspects of it. Of course, not everything, so I want to be clear on that. There are some things that that we could point out here that are not perfect, but the biggest thing I would say is being a 52 DSO, we would want to know, like at one point when it was resprayed or repainted, if you will, was there anything underneath the car that was of significant challenges in terms of, body work? My assumption is no, being that it was a California car, but you just never really know. The car, for the most part, to me, again, kind of looks like a true Lincoln. It's got these normal things that you're going to see. It's not perfect, if you will. There are some items, like, for instance, right here, you've got these little snap deals, and then you also have the wood trim is missing from the glove box that was available in those years. They do a great job of pointing out some of the minor imperfections, and this could have been a paint job many, many years ago, and it's not going to be perfect, but I often talk about, I like cars. I'd rather have a car like that. We can see the wheel covers aren't perfect either, the black, so this gives a good indication. Oftentimes, you'll see folks like myself that have went and had someone polish these, high-speed polish them, and they kind of look chrome. And then what they'll do is they'll, of course, remove that paint. But here you can see the paint is partially there. The dog leg on this side looks good, which is this area here. Oftentimes, these can be a little bit suspect. Here's kind of the money shot with the 2 doors open. We get a chance to see into the car a little bit. We can see they do have the releases in the back for the doors here. They're mounted correctly facing forward. Those are often kind of put on backwards. We can see the little, the tip for where you adjust the seat that is broken. That is something that's often broken, and you can kind of reach out to the usual suspect type shops like Lincoln Land and typically get one of those. There are some people remaking some of those parts, but for the most part, the seat switch on that driver's side, it does have that one little item missing. When you look at the car, you kind of see the originality of the carpet. It's kind of hard to tell if the seats have maybe been redone. I want to say yes. I think many of you are probably going to yell at the screen and go, yeah, absolutely, the seats have been redone. Certainly, they don't look horrible. It's going to be your preference if you wanted to go, and maybe redo those with a Jim Wallace kit or something like that. Again, it does cost money, but I think at the end of the day, if somebody was looking to get this car, turnkey, get in, cruise it up and down, take it to get ice cream with the family and stuff, so far what I'm seeing is it's definitely in that category. I did notice this up-down switch for the top, more than likely, obviously, is not you've got your little kind of aftermarket setup. I don't own a 61.2 or 61.2 or 3. I know the switch is a little bit different. It changes in 65. I'll talk more about that in the future on some other podcast episodes I'm working on. But you can obviously see here that's where you would adjust the top for the up or down. I'm a big fan of these dashes, especially in 63, and you'll see here the little ring, if you will, the decorative piece is missing from the ignition. The ignition is on the left side in these years, and it does go to the right of the steering wheel in 64. We could see here again kind of a true original car. It has that almost like a clear coat type deal that I've talked about in the past here. This can you can either leave this as is if you don't mind it, or you can use that quadruple zero steel wool and Brasso polish to really kind of polish that up, and it will remove that film, if you will. I mentioned here the glove box again. This doesn't look horrible. I mean, I guess if you really looked at it, you'd say, hey, well, it doesn't look perfect, but certainly you can see over here, talking to Chris at Lincoln Land in the past, he has mentioned how many different pieces of wood that were available. Now, I know some of you might be saying, well, hey, this has it on the door panels. This could have been one that didn't have it up in this area on these pieces down here, so it is hard to tell. Someone could kind of maybe chime in off the top of their head, but I can see the wood grain piece that is behind the cluster up here. So let me know if I'm off on this. Maybe did someone remove it and just try to kind of clean and polish this up, or could you have kept this wood on the door panels and opted for the wood pieces to be not installed there. Again, it's not perfect, but a lot of times these cars aren't. I'm certainly in the category of one. I'd rather have a car that's more kind of a true original that I could bring back versus something that's really been tampered with a lot, or kind of destroyed, if you will. And here again, showing full disclosure, you're seeing the paint is not perfect. Little things in here you could get and clean up. I could tell you these like sill plates and whatnot, if these have never been off or it's been a long time, getting these screws out sometimes can just be a little bit of a pain, but you would just take your time and you could certainly get in here and clean a lot of that up if that's something that you wanted to do. Looking at the engine bay, a few things that stand out. It has the single master cylinder. It also has the 2-port, not the 3-port fuel pump. Certainly not a big deal depending on where you live, but we always recommend a 3-port. You can get them now. If you don't have a 3-port core, they're going to run anywhere from like $350 to $500 for one that's rebuilt. We can see the DSO 52 would have had this extra item here that I often refer to for the California emissions. And for me, something sticking out here that it wasn't originally here. So I don't know if something happened maybe to the other air cleaner, because I want to say this comes into the side. I own a 65 with a DSO from California, so I should know off the top of my head. But sometimes when I look at these photos, I go, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. So I don't know over the course of time if someone drilled this in here and the air cleaner was missing or something to that effect. But regardless, this is kind of a rare thing. You don't see it as much, because this, of course, is a California car. It is an AC car, so it has the fan clutch as well as the shroud. And you can see the engine bay. You could spend a lot of time cleaning this up and restoring it if that's something that you wanted to do. The MEL 430 is definitely a strong engine, and it's good to see, the originality. There's some good photos underneath it. Of course, this is not on a lift, but we see a couple scrapes here. This is very, very minor. All of this look and kind of grunginess under these cars is normal. I've talked about it a lot. These cars do tend to leak oil and different fluids and things like that. So certainly when I look at this, if I was in person, I would want to just kind of investigate this the best I could. But for the most part, everything that I'm seeing here looks, true to what they're, kind of showcasing to us, if you will, via these photos. The last thing I will hit upon is there's a ton of receipts. So I'm not going to go through all these, but you can go through some of the previous sales of the car. You can kind of see where it's sold for. You can see some of the parts. We saw the muffler a moment ago and some of that exhaust that was recently redone. But there's a good amount of information, if you will. In addition, I often talk about hydroelectric. And you can see here the company, this is a catalog of theirs, and this is back in 2015. The key thing here is, like John Cashman would always reinforce, that these cars in 61, 62, 63, they did not use Type F for the top fluid. So typically when you're going to replace parts, which all of this has been done, from what we can tell, they'll replace the old automatic transmission fluid or brake fluid, excuse me, it's brake fluid. They'll replace the brake fluid that was used in the 1s, 2s, and 3s with the Type F. And typically, if you were only changing one cylinder or one ram, you wouldn't want to mix the fluids and things like that. What we can see, and I believe there's a receipt in there from Hydroelectric where they've went and they've changed all of this, and you can actually see the lines right here with the newer brass. More than likely, the rams and everything has been changed, and that's fantastic. It does look like a newer pump over here as well. So and then it's hard to tell if everything's been done, but it does look pretty clean overall. But that's something that goes a long way, because if you're $1,500 to $2,000 plus just to buy the kit, and you're not mechanically inclined to kind of swap it all and then bleed the system, certainly that's worth its value and kind of weight in gold, if you will, for that. The 1s, 2s, and 3s, as I often talked about, the trunk setup's a little bit different. In 64, this spare tire goes down in the wheel well that's down here. But this is correct for the 1s, 2s, and 3s. You've got that slant, if you will, where the spare tire sits there. You can kind of see the dinginess often that we see. I do like that most of the carpet stuff is there. You can get a carpet kit from Jim Wallace. There's a few other players out there, but Jim Wallace is the main one. You've got that original bias ply tire for the spare, which I totally dig. I would leave that. And then, of course, you've got that grayish color that the wheels were actually factory painted that color. With that being said, I'd like to kind of know what you guys think. There are some questions in here, but I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit shorter. My gut feeling is this one will go north of 50,000. It really should. I think in many ways, my gut feeling's 50 to 65,000, which I think would be a strong number for it. It's probably going to be a solid car for someone to either restore or, dare I say, customized. I'd love to see it brought back to its original glory, but that's, of course, in the eye of the beholder, whoever buys it. So stay on the rise, everyone. Thank you for the support. Don't forget to leave a comment and stay on the rise. ODB, the Lincoln Addict, we're out of here.